Couple of things, it might be helpful just to underline and put maybe a slightly finer point on some things that were covered in some of those excellent sessions today and that we'll continue with in the afternoon. I had a chance to listen to a few minutes of the session on how to deal with fire smoke, and it reminds me what a number of our speakers have said and what some folks who have studied fire smoke continue to remind us of, which is if we can strike the word taint from our vocabulary, we will help ourselves. Not to be clever with words or to obscure anything, but as those of us who've studied a little bit of the effects of smoke, and there are certainly people who've studied it far more than me after I was invited to leave high school chemistry, the whole kind of cocktail of smoke compounds is so complicated, and the way they can affect both grapes and wines is far more than just simply the effects of guaiacol. There is other compounds, there's free and bound compounds. It's a complicated issue, and much of it depends on what the source of the smoke was, when it was in your vineyard, if it was ground level or high elevation. There's just a lot of variables. We're learning to not use the word taint anymore, but talk about smoke-related effects or smoke-related compounds. It allows us to have a richer conversation. So please join us in that Oregon wine vow to never say smoke taint again. A couple other things I should touch on real quick. My colleague Kai McMurtry was up during the morning session with his presentation of our consumer relations activity for the Oregon Wine Board. And he talked about something called OWA, which we all know because we've had a chance to be involved in it for a bit, but if you're new to it, it's the Oregon Tourism Information System, and it's been designed in close partnership with our colleagues at Travel Oregon. And what Kai wanted to make sure was clear, and I know it came up briefly in the session that was held on Knowing Your Visitors, is that the Oregon Tourism Information System draws its information from the Oregon Wine Board's database that you populate with your tasting room information. It is never too late, and it is not too late now to go to our Oregon Wine Board website and provide us everything that you want us to know about your tasting room operation. And then every so often, Travel Oregon will grab those database updates, and that's what will go into OWA, the Oregon Tourism Information System, and that helps expose your tasting room details to a far, far broader audience. So please grab us afterwards if any of that was unclear, but we still encourage and really want to invite any tasting room operator or manager to give us all your information for OWA. Wi-Fi still up there if you need it. I don't think I have anything further, except I do want to touch on something that was mentioned in one of the really great sessions done today that featured Danny Brager, Greg Jones, and Tony Correa made some comments. If you didn't see his session, it reminds me to tell you that all these sessions are being videotaped in case you missed one and you want to go view it, or somebody from your business couldn't be here today and you want to make sure they see it. But in Greg's session with Tony, Tony did draw some very important distinctions between appellations of origin and American viticultural areas. Appellations of origin are not the same. All AVAs are appellations of origin. All appellations are not necessarily AVAs. If that sounds confusing, it is a little bit confusing, but now that Oregon now has 19 AVAs, you've certainly seen us comment and you've certainly seen interest in protecting our AVAs. Not because we're at war with anybody out of state or anybody anywhere. We're not at war. We're just trying to protect and preserve Oregon's AVAs and have everyone follow the same set of rules that you as Oregon winemakers have to follow. That's all we're trying to do, is ensure equity and fairness in the enforcement of Oregon's 42-year-old labeling rules. There's more on that, but I don't want to get too much into it right now. I want to keep us rolling. I'm going to turn the podium over real quick to my Oregon Wine Board colleague. She's our vice president who manages all of our finance and accounting operations. Someone's clapping because I'm getting off the stage. That's very funny. Our next speaker manages all of our financial and accounting operations at the Wine Board. She also manages our international portfolio of events and activities. She is the one who knits together the two really important hemispheres of this great event called the Symposium. There's an elaborate and extensive trade show here, and without our trade show partners, there would be no symposium. On the other half, you've got all these great educational seminars, and when those two come together, it works really well, like we intend it to work this time. But with that broad portfolio, she's just a tremendous partner to me and a tremendous servant of our industry. So please welcome Marie Chambers.
Thank you, Tom. So first, I'd like to thank two really important sponsors of the event. The first one is Columbia Bank. They're our registration sponsor this year, and they've been our registration sponsor for many years. So I want to thank them for their support. They are a Northwest Community Bank in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, and they provide comprehensive solutions and expertise to businesses and individuals. So thank you to Columbia. The other sponsor I'd like to thank is Country Financial. They're this year's soiree sponsor. They've been sponsoring the soiree for as long as it's existed, and they provide a really amazing, delicious dessert bar during the soiree. So if you're looking for more reasons to attend the soiree, that should be at the top of your list. They are also donating $10 for every quote that they provide during these 2 days at their booth. They'll donate $10 to Salud. So that's another really nice enhancement that they're offering. So thank you to both of those sponsors. And so I thought I'd just quickly comment on some other pieces of this event. I think it's safe to say that the Oregon Wine Symposium is by far the largest wine industry gathering in Oregon. And despite the wild weather forecasts, this year's event is our biggest ever. Attendance is up more than 12%, and with our 235 exhibitors, we'll have about 2,000 friends wandering the halls over these 2 days. That includes more than 500 OWA members, 50 Spanish-speaking attendees, 50 educators and students, more than 50 speakers and panelists, and more than 30 event volunteers. So thank you to everyone who has attended, and especially Eugenia Keegan for coming back every year. We really appreciate that. The topic of sustainability, of course, is important to our industry, and it's also important for this event. So the Oregon Convention Center, as many of you probably know, is a LEED certified building. But our event partner, Social Enterprises, they're also a certified B Corp, and they work really hard with the convention center to minimize paper and plastic waste during our event and the overall environmental impact of the event. So we take a continuous improvement approach to planning this event every year, and we're always very interested to hear your feedback. So I encourage you to take time to complete the surveys when you receive them at the end of the event. So switching gears a little bit, I also wanted to touch on a couple other OWB topics. The first one, as Eugenia mentioned earlier this morning, the Oregon Wine Board is largely funded by your grape tonnage taxes, but it's not as well known that 26% of our annual income actually comes from grants. So in the past 3 years, the Oregon Wine Board team has applied for and won more than $2.7 million in grants. It's a big number. And those grant programs range from the USDA grant programs, Wine Country License Plate grant program, and others. And these grant dollars supplement your tax dollars and help us in marketing and research programs. And one of those programs is our international marketing program, which provides trade and consumer tastings and educational events in markets such as Toronto, London, Tokyo, Copenhagen, Stockholm, and at Provine, which is one of the largest wine trade shows in the world. Last year, we saw a huge increase in the number of exporting wines. It was about 44% of an increase, 44% of increased cases exported internationally. And I observe in all of the events that I attend a really positive interest and reception from all of the international trade at our shows. So all of our international events are open to wineries looking for importers. So if you're ever interested in expanding your sales internationally, watch the Grapevine newsletter for opportunities, and you can also reach out to me and my colleague Margaret Bray, who's here with us today, if you have any questions or want more details on the programs. And since Margaret is here, I just wanted to say thank you to her for all of the hard work that she's done for the Oregon Wine Board over the last 8+ years. She, of course, helped with the logistics and planning of this event for a very long time, and now she supports all of our international tastings and domestic tastings as well, and I know many of you know her, so thank you, Margaret. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Tom.
Thank you, Marie, and thank you, Margaret, for all that you do for us. To keep our program moving, I want to bring up our next speaker. One of the things you've heard us talk about a couple of times is A, tell us if you're not getting the grapevine. 2, we're trying to focus more of our wine board programming on things that can have direct and fairly short-term impacts on the early stage and small to mid-sized family businesses that make up the majority of our industry. And one of the programs that we have introduced over the last couple of years is to elevate Oregon's presence at a really important conference of on-premise wine professionals. The conference is held every year in Texas. It's called TexSom. We learned a lot from watching our colleagues in Washington State have some success elevating their own profile there, and they said, boy, you should really get in on this. And our wine board team started working on this a few years ago. One of the things that goes along with the annual summer conference is a winter wine competition, the TexSom International Wine Awards. And we've encouraged more Oregon wineries to enter their wines in that, and they have, and the results have been very, very encouraging. But one of the things that was realized, Christina DiArmond, who you know, recognized that a number of wineries anxious to participate and get their wines in the spotlight needed help getting them there. Working closely with our next speaker, there was an offer made to the industry to pay your shipping for wine entries into that TexSom International Wine Awards competition, to waive the cost for that, to make that available for free. That wouldn't have happened without the extraordinary partnership of FedEx. And that's just one of the things that FedEx does for us. But the effort is led by a guy who's just become a superb partner. And it's hard to go to an AVA meeting or any kind of meeting where he either hasn't been or is just coming after you when you leave. So please give a warm welcome to somebody who's just been a huge part of our success over the last few years, Scott Lombardo from FedEx.
Hello, Oregon. For the last 5 years, FedEx has been a proud sponsor of the Oregon Wine Growers Association and the Oregon Wine Symposium. During that time, we've also extended our reach to sponsor and benefit the Oregon Tempranillo Festival, the Willamette Valley Wine Barrel Auction, their inaugural event, and this year we're also sponsoring Pour Oregon. It has been a proud opportunity for us to be able to extend those opportunities of FedEx to the wine community. And with that, I've had the great privilege of getting to know many of you over that time frame, and the unique privilege of saying that FedEx is the only carrier currently in the marketplace that has a dedicated rep specifically to your industry. With that said, FedEx has continued to expand our hold at location options for you, allowing residents the ability to go into any Walgreens in the United States and obtain their packages at their convenient time slots. FedEx Freight Box has been expanded to simplify freight use so that you can now ship larger portions at a flat rate box option in large shipments. And we have our continuation of our cold chain program beginning May 15th. It has been 5 years here in the Oregon market, and the expansion of that cold chain program has been a benefit to all of our folks during the hottest times of the year. We have also recently this year just added a 6-day schedule, so now there is truly 6 days of delivery for all customers. Now with the changes, and the most largest impact to you is changes, of course, with the OWA pricing program, and that the members within OWA achieve a savings of over $1 per box this year from the previous year. And along with that enhancement, it means that members of OWA get a benefit of almost $3 savings per package, per case, I should say, in regard to any other wine program out there. And I want to extend that wonderful negotiation and capability with Jana, who's going to be our next presenter. And thank you so much for the time and opportunity to be a part of your community. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jana McCamey, the Government Affairs and Operations Vice President for the Oregon Wine Growers Association. I want to thank you all for being here. It's so great to see so many friendly faces in the crowd that I can sort of see from up here with all these lights, but also a lot of new faces, and that's really exciting for us. I want to start at the ground level, and I think we need to add 30 minutes to the clock so we can talk about the differences between the OWA and the OWB. Now, it does get confusing. We recognize that, and so we try to parse it down here for you to say, you know, if you're paying your tonnage tax, which I know you all are, then you're a part of the Oregon Wine Board. It's tax funded, and also with your privilege tax payments. The Oregon Wine Growers Association is a membership organization. And so I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of our members in the crowd for their generous contribution. And I hope by the time we're through today that we'll have inspired more of you to come see us at the OWA booth and to sign up to be a member. OWA is focused on state and federal legislative and regulatory advocacy. We provide compliance guidance and updates to members to help you navigate that complex environment. And we also have some cost savings opportunities like Scott outlined with the FedEx program. The state legislature in Salem is underway on a 160-day session. So this is one of the long years. In the even years, we get a 35-day session, which is nice and short, but we're in it for 160 days. And I can definitely tell you that I and our team down in Salem are going to be enjoying a nice glass of Oregon wine by the end of June to celebrate the end of the session. The focus for the OWA for this session is really on strengthening wine labeling rules and enforcement. If you've been reading any articles over the last number of months, you've seen that this issue has risen high on the agenda. As Oregon is recognized both nationally and around the world for making such high quality wine, there are sometimes those that would like to take advantage and benefit from that. And so this is a natural evolution in a way. We look at our friends in Napa Valley, and they have been working very hard to protect their name for decades, really. And so it's a natural evolution for us to step more into this space. We're supporting a comprehensive truth and labeling bill in Salem. Here's a list of what it would do. It would clarify when wines are deceptively labeled. It would require the state of production to be clearly listed next to the origin of the wine grapes if it's made outside of Oregon. It would include a new permit which will help with the collection of tonnage tax from out-of-state wineries. About 20% of our harvest is going out of state, and we want those funds to be going to the wine board to help promote Oregon wine. There will also be new civil penalties and license suspension, and it also authorizes the Oregon Liquor Control Commission and Department of Justice to enter into reciprocal enforcement agreements with other states. We are also supporting a bill that would create a new private right of action under the Unfair Trade Practices Act for willful violators of Oregon's labeling rules. This will provide an extra stick to follow the rules, and it's really intended for those who are making a willful, knowledgeable violation of our labeling rules. And just in case everyone doesn't know here in the crowd, Oregon 41 years ago sought much higher standards than are what are at the federal level. So that's really what we're looking to defend, these 41-year-old rules that have really helped underpin the industry and create high-quality wines and recognition in the marketplace. We're also working on a joint memorial with Willamette Valley Vineyards, which would be basically a note sent from our state legislature to Congress, to the TTB, and to other states, inviting their cooperation and participation in enforcing state and federal labeling regulations. And that is really going to show the great support that we're getting from our lawmakers here in Oregon. They want to protect and promote the industry, and we think we'll get good support for that joint memorial. Now, there are many other issues that I could touch on today, and I have a couple of slides just to bring you up to speed on some issues that can impact the wine industry that you might want to know about. This list is by no means comprehensive. However, we have a great team in Salem looking through bills, advocating on your behalf, so know that we are covered. The Willamette Valley Wineries Association is proposing to make some labeling rule changes for Willamette Valley AVA wines. The Willamette Valley Wineries Association has a booth on the trade show floor, so if you'd like to talk with them in more detail, please see them at their booth. Wine privilege tax increase. So the state is looking for between $2 and $3 billion for K through 12 education, in addition to funding of PERS, the Public Employee Retirement System. And so wine privilege tax is on the table. There's a bill that's been introduced in the House Revenue Committee that would raise the privilege tax from 65 cents a gallon to $1.18. So we're working closely with other groups that are also seeing tax increases to talk about how our taxes here are calculated in the state, that it's a producer tax, and that really keeping those taxes low has helped drive growth in this industry, and we want to be careful when we're looking at tax changes. There's also a proposal by Senate President Peter Courtney, and it has the support of the governor, and that would lower the blood alcohol content from 0.08 to 0.05 for drunk driving offenses. Now, we know that that can have impacts on wine tourism and restaurant patronage. We also want to be mindful of safety and talk about, what our industry does to properly train staff at tasting rooms to look out for any issues. So we're working on communications around that issue and looking for some research that really points to how that change would make a big difference in road safety. There's also efforts to expand commercial solar development on high-value farmland. Those efforts will continue in the session. There's a proposal to establish farm cafes and restaurants on any farm that has 20 acres or more, so that could be vineyards or hay production. A big priority of Democrats this session is a cap and invest bill, so this puts a cap on carbon and to do Oregon's share of trying to combat global warming. We do think that that bill is likely to pass. There's talk of increased fuel costs and things of that nature, but the wine industry isn't directly under any sort of cap, and we know that climate change is a real detriment to our industry unless we're going to start growing different types of varietals. So that's a bill that's in the hopper. Lastly, the Oregon Liquor Control Commission is proposing to double all of their licensing fees. So this, for example, would mean that the winery license fees would go up from $250 to $500 annually. Now, we know that that can be a big jump for a lot of people. Talking with OLCC about how they would use the funds would be for IT upgrades. So, for instance, being able to get your privilege tax payments online. But we're trying to communicate with them also about increasing their enforcement on wine labeling. So we do know they need more resources. Shifting to the federal level briefly, our focus in cooperation with Wine America, the National Trade Association, they're the organization with boots on the ground in Washington, D.C., and it is an important organization to support, is the Craft Beverage Modernization and Tax Reform Act. If you remember, this bill was introduced by Senator Wyden a few years ago. It was rolled into a Republican tax bill at the end of 2017, and it made these tax credits available for only 2 years. So at the end of this year, those tax credits expire. So this bill would extend those tax credits indefinitely, and it would also seek to deal with the issues that came up for wine transfers in bond and custom crush facilities, including making those retroactive. There's still work that needs to be done on the custom crush side, but we hope to get to a good spot with that bill and get it passed this year with our important partners like Wine America. On the TTB side, I mentioned we're focusing on enforcement, so we will be communicating more and more with TTB about ensuring that the COLAs are properly processed and that our appellations of origin are correctly referenced. Also, Notice 176 you may have heard about, which would modernize labeling and advertising regulations. We're working on detailed comments with industry input in order to reflect what changes we would like to see for the Oregon wine industry. Lastly, Tom was noting smoke issues. There are a few efforts afoot at the federal level. One is extension of the WIP program, which is the Wildfire and Hurricane Indemnity Program, that may make some relief available to growers who were impacted in the 2018 crop year. We're also working with other wine groups to try to seek an appropriation for more research into smoke impacts. And that would be part of the appropriations process. So hope to have good news on that next year. On April 10th and 11th, we'll be flying to DC with a group of our member wineries to do meetings with the congressional delegation and the TTB, USDA, and others. This will be in cooperation with Washington State again, and we'll be doing a wine tasting on April 10th. If you're interested, we still have a few spots available for winery principals to participate in both the meetings and the tasting. This is a really great chance for us to showcase Oregon to our nation's capital and do our federal work on a shoestring, since we don't have a lobbying presence in DC. Shifting very briefly to the compliance side of things, I hope you'll take the opportunity to stop by the Davis Wright Tremaine booth. They've got a lot of great reference materials that they've put together for OWA members and is made available to everyone here at this event. We do have something called the reference toolbox. I hope that you've seen it before. It's on the OWA website, and it's password protected for OWA members only. If you'd like a test drive, if you're not a non-member, we'd be happy to arrange that for you. This is the warehouse of all of the regulatory information that you probably in some ways would rather not know, but you need to know about. And so we hope that you're going on there, and there's separate navigation for wineries and vineyards and touches on employment topics, tax topics, labor topics, everything under the sun. So please take a chance to look through the reference toolbox on the OWA website. Lastly, I want to talk about some of the cost savings opportunities for our members. We're always seeking to sweeten the pot and to try to offset some of the costs of membership. Scott talked about the amazing FedEx program. I was really excited to hear that, $1 per box. You can pretty easily do the math on what you're saving by being a part of the OWA program, and then you can minus that off of the dues that you're paying us. We also have the cooperation with DWT, and you can get answers to your basic legal questions from DWT. Nothing specific, to your individual case, but some general info. We also have the $60 ticket discount for the wine symposium that many of you took advantage of. And we have a program with Office Depot to save on your office supplies. I do want to touch on our newest benefit, which is with Gively. This is a B corporation, and what they do is they provide a software service to help you manage all of the requests that you get for donations at your winery. So whether it's for tours or for cases of wine, etc., this allows you to create a template on your website, standardize the information that you'd like to request, and then more easily say yes or say no to those requests that are coming in. And then at the end of the year, it helps you quantify your charitable giving, which we think is great. So Amy Kaufman from Gively is here at the symposium, and she'll be at the OWA booth for all the trade show breaks over the next couple of days. So please stop by and learn more about this awesome benefit. Lastly, I'll mention OWA's first consumer tasting that we're doing. Yes, this is the Oregon Wine Growers Association, and it will be for OWA members only. We expect about 40 wineries to participate. June 2nd at Castaway, we'll be sharing more information soon with OWA members, including the possibility to sign up. So I hope you will take the opportunity to come talk to me, to come talk to my colleague Jessica Blauert, who's our membership coordinator, about OWA, the work that we're doing, the benefits of being a member. But I also want you to have a chance to hear from a few of your industry colleagues, because I can stand up here and talk to you about membership, but I think it really matters for you to hear from your friends and neighbors. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Hi, I'm Tom Donowski with the Oregon Wine Growers Association. I want to open this video by thanking our members, those who fund the work of the association and have done so for over 6 decades. The Wine Growers Association was set up to advance and protect the interests of Oregon's family wine businesses. It does so by focusing on specific legislative, policy, and regulatory issues at the federal, state, and county levels. The mission of the OWA is truly unique and unduplicated. As we look across Oregon, we see a wine industry that is responsible for over 17,000 jobs, is generating economic impact of $3.3 billion annually and almost $250 million in wine tourism impact. While those numbers are impressive, we acknowledge the competitive realities and the fact that your family wine business is probably competing in an environment that's as difficult as it's ever been.
I'm Ann Hubach, owner and winemaker of Helioterra Wines. I am proud to support the Oregon Wine Growers Association because they really understand the needs of both big and small wineries like myself. While working with Senator Wyden to support the craft beverage modernization and tax reform bill, they really showed their dedication because they're proving that they can work on bills and policy that can help reduce federal excise tax for all Oregon wineries. Being a member of the Oregon Wine Growers Association is just common sense. I'm proud to be a member. I've been a member since I started my winery, and I think it's really worth it.
Hi, my name is Herb Quaddy, and I'm the founder and chief winemaker at Quaddy North Winery in Southern Oregon. And I've been a member of the Oregon Wine Growers Association since 2006, when I first started the winery. Recently, the red blotch virus has moved through many vineyards in Southern Oregon, including my own. We're still learning a lot about this disease, including the vectors and the effect that it has on our crops. But so far, the results have been quite significant. Recently, the Oregon Wine Growers Association helped secure passage of the Maris Bill, which is the first bill which will direct funding directly to efforts of marketing and scientific research for the Oregon wine industry. $500,000 will be available specifically for these projects, and some of that will go towards fighting this deadly disease. It's reasons like this type of advocacy, that I'm a member of the Oregon Wine Growers Association, and I will continue to be in the future.
The OWA advocates for vineyards and wineries, large and small, from all regions of the state. Some recent examples of our work on your behalf include helping pass legislation establishing the country's first wine country license plate program that creates an ongoing pool of funds that regional associations can access for tourism promotion. Intervening with the U.S. Departments of Labor and Homeland Security in response to member concerns about legal requirements and intrusive enforcement activities. Working with the Oregon Liquor Control Commission to enact sensible wine quality assurance sampling rules and to allow wineries to use social media within certain guidelines to promote tastings and special events. Providing legal support to growers and winemakers threatened by new asphalt batching operations near vineyards.
While advocacy is our top priority, we also offer guidance through our new compliance resource, OWA's Reference Toolbox, which is a compilation of regulatory guidance, rules, regulations, and contacts to help navigate the complex legal and business world. OWA also knows that offsetting costs is a big deal for most of our members. To that, OWA has created cost savings programs that include Office Depot, the Oregon Wine Symposium ticket discounts, as well as legal guidance from our attorneys at Davis Wright Tremaine. One of the best opportunities, especially for our small to mid-sized wineries, is our partnership with FedEx Shipping.
My name is Brooke Robertson, and I am the Director of Viticulture for my family estate, SJR Vineyard in Delmas in the Rocks District, AVA. Being that we are in a cross-border situation, having a winery on one side and the vineyard fruit source on the other, the OWA has been instrumental in providing us a voice to advocate on our behalf. Being the micro producer that we are, it's been extremely helpful to our cause.
I'm Jesse Lang, winemaker, wine grower for my family's heritage vineyard site and winery in the heart of the Dundee Hills, founded in 1987. Senate Bill 841 was the culmination of a lot of regional groups working together with the OWA to help protect Oregon's land use laws that have really been part and parcel to our community and to our agricultural industry. But it also was, in a way, very conducive to our thriving business development. As a second-generation wine grower and winemaker, and as a newly minted father of one, I'm very much committed to keeping Oregon, Oregon, and protecting our land use laws and our business opportunities for future generations.
I started by thanking the members of the Oregon Wine Growers Association for supporting the work that benefits our industry. It's important to note, however, that those paying dues represent fewer than half of our total industry members. So we invite those who haven't yet joined, or those who have joined but have perhaps let their memberships lapse, to rejoin and support the work that is benefiting winemakers and wine grape growers all over the state. Thank you.
So I get to close this pitch, and who isn't afraid of a 6'2" redhead? That's why they asked me to do it. Hi, I'm Ellen Britton, and my husband Robert and I own Britton Vineyards in McMinnville. We make about 3,000 cases of Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Syrah at our estate vineyard, and I had the honor of being a board member of OWA for 6 years and witnessed firsthand the amount of work that is done on our behalf by the OWA team, along with our partners at Davis Wright Tremaine and Crosswater Strategies. They do a fantastic job of staying on top of legislative and regulatory issues, both in the state of Oregon as well as on the federal level, and they are critical to the health of our industry. No other organization in this state does this work, and their activities benefit every one of us sitting in this room, regardless of your size or whether you make wine or grow grapes. If you're in Oregon, you are benefiting from the work that's going on by this organization. The OWA is a membership organization, and its only source of revenue is membership dues. So if you are not a member of the OWA, then you're depending on those of us who are to protect your interests without paying your fair share. Right now, I think you heard this statistic earlier, fewer than 1/3 of our industry colleagues have joined OWA. I can tell you personally that the $600 Robert and I pay to the OWA each year is one of the best investments we make to protect our business and defend our industry. One quick example, when we were being faced with very difficult overtime rule changes, the OWA set me up to go to Salem to testify on how difficult it would be on our industry to be limited to 50 hours a week maximum for winery workers during harvest, and we were able to get that pushed up to 80 hours a week for special circumstances. That's just one example that would have slipped by without the OWA watching out for our interests, along with Davis Wright Tremaine and the great work that Dan Jarman and his crew does at Crosswater Strategies. So I realize that none of us want to pay more dues, and another bill for membership dues when we all belong to so many organizations is not very welcome. But two good points to that. One is it's prorated by size, so the smaller organizations pay less than the larger ones. And also, as Tom Denowsky asked me to include, it is tax deductible. In addition to the advocacy that the OWA does, we also have to look at the cost savings of all the benefits that have been negotiated on our behalf. I can honestly tell you that between the savings on the symposium and the savings on our FedEx shipping, we save more than we pay in dues, so it's actually costing us less to belong to the organization than to not belong to the organization. So, for all of you who belong, and thank you, and please continue to be members of the OWA. And for those of you who you know you should be joining and you've been thinking about it, let's Marie Kondo that guilt and just go to the OWA booth, write a check, sign up, and join our organization. You will be very happy you did. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you, Ellen and Jana. And on your table, you'll probably see a small brochure that tells you a little bit more about the Oregon Wine Growers Association, both some of the cost savings that are available to members and some of the important benefits. I would say one of the threads we're trying to draw through our presentations today is this notion of how can we help the small to mid-size family wine business. And you'll see in this brochure some of the details about things that we do. One of the ones that just comes right to mind is late last fall, there was a expiration of wastewater discharge permits, and the Department of Environmental Quality was going to author new rules. And because of what the Oregon Wine Growers Association in partnership, a lot of feedback, because of what the Oregon Wine Growers Association was able to do in partnership with other associations around the state and working with some of our state regulators, we were able to exempt wineries producing about 6,000 cases or less from having to pay those new fees. So that's another direct benefit. I would also say for many, many wine businesses in Oregon, the membership fee to join annually is about $200. So it's manageable. We really want you in, not just for money, but be able to represent your interests and your needs. Speaking federally, as we heard a couple things touched on federally, I try to say this in all the regional meetings I go to, but for this larger audience, it might be relevant to you, especially as you're doing taxes now. If you had any replanting or grafting or new planting costs associated with your business in 2018, those are fully deductible. For the first time, you can fully deduct the expenses. You used to have to spread those costs out over time. Under Section 13201, and grab me after if you want to write that down, make sure your accountant knows that if you incurred replanting, grafting, or new planting costs, they are in 2018 fully deductible. And more deductions equal lower taxable income equals lower tax liability and better cash flow. So if that's of interest, come and grab me. That's it for the OWA. I do want to move on to the next part of our program, but I would encourage you, if you have questions about any of this stuff we flew over real quickly, please do stop by the Oregon Wine Growers Association booth. To keep our program moving, I want to just kind of rewind the tape a little bit. When I was up here this morning, I told you that we've oriented our Oregon Wine Board activities around some critical audiences. Media relations, you heard us talk about that program. Trade relations, you heard us talk about some of what we do there, and we also talked about consumer relations. The fourth corner in our four-corner box is industry relations. And this year we asked our director, Jessica Willey, when she came back from having one of the most beautiful babies you'll ever see in your life. She came back from maternity leave and took on a new role that has turned out to be a really tremendous service so far to the industry. She directs all of our industry relations and all of our strategic research and insights activity as a way to better communicate with our stakeholders who pay our salaries and pay taxes what we're doing for you and how to get you engaged. One of the first tasks that we attached to that new job was to take a really clean and fresh look at our scientific research initiatives. Over the last several years, that program has gotten very sophisticated and is generating some tremendous results, but it's also coming at a cost, and it's a cost that your wine board of directors is glad to recognize. That's an important investment in our future. We spend more on research by far, more per ton than our colleagues in Washington State do. And we're spending more now than we've ever spent. And we are accessing new federal matching streams that weren't available to us before, largely because the OWA has been an effective advocate in Washington, D.C., but also because in partnership with scientists in University of Oregon, certainly Oregon State, and certainly Linfield, there's a research community and a whole ecosystem that is really starting to gel. We asked Jessica Willey and some of our research folks to initiate a healthy review of our research program. And they'll tell you a little bit about what was involved in it, but it culminated in a research summit that was held late last fall that was the first one we've done since like 1991. But it was a good chance to pause and give ourselves an honest assessment of how we are doing with our research. And we learned some really important things that are now going to be explained to you now. So over the next few minutes, you'll get a chance to hear from Jessica Willey, as well as Jason Tosh and Greg Jones, about our research and also about an important project that's pending right now. So I'll turn it over now to Jessica Willey.
Good afternoon. Whew, it's in that post-lunch slump, so we'll try to keep this moving. So if we haven't met before, as Tom mentioned a few times, I'm Jess Willey. I am the Director of Strategic Insights and Industry Relations for the Oregon Wine Board, which is a mouthful. But essentially my work entails leading a variety of research programs to increase our collective business intelligence, working with our committees and board members on strategic planning to guide the investments that we make on your behalf, and ensuring that you're kept in the know about what we're up to and have access to the resources and tools that you can use to implement our programming. Right, so Tom and my other colleagues have mentioned the grapevine a few times, but it officially lives with me, so I get to put it on a slide. The number one way you can stay up to date with what the OWB is up to and how to get involved, and not to mention hearing about a lot of other opportunities that cross our desks, is to read the grapevine. It's our bi-weekly roundup of updates and opportunities that run the gamut from research reports to media relations requests. If you're not receiving this newsletter, there's a sign-up button at the bottom of our industry the bottom of the homepage on our industry website, industry.oregonwine.org, or you can find me and hand me a business card, and I'll get you signed up. So, speaking about the website. This site is intended to be a one-stop shop for everything that we do for you. You'll find their marketing toolkits, webinar and workshop recordings, including the presentation recordings from the symposiums, both this year's and years past. Updates on OWB-funded research, the valuable new Oregon Wine Profit Planner tool, which Bree will talk about tomorrow, the industry events calendar, and just so much more is on that site for you. We're always striving to improve what we put on there and how it's laid out to make things easy to find. So if you have any suggestions for this or you can't find what you're looking for, send me a note, and I'm happy to take that feedback into account. So one important report that you'll find on this site is the annual Vineyard and Winery Report, which is possibly our most anticipated publication of the year. And as always, we need your help to make this as valuable as possible. The more participation that we get in this across the state, the better and more specific it can be. So this report not only provides data that you as businesses can use when transacting with each other, but it also gives important information that helps us to make the case for why the media should tell a good story about our industry, why legislators should support the Oregon wine industry, and it also helps us build a strong argument for grant funding that we get from a variety of sources. We're partnering with the University of Oregon for the second year in a row to complete this research. And we've also been taking your feedback into account to try to improve the survey's clarity and ease of taking, as well as the usefulness of the data. And there's the team from the U of O, Bob Parker and Steve Dobrinich are at a table in the lobby ready to answer your questions. If you have any concerns about the kind of data that they're collecting, the confidentiality, or just have some questions about the survey, they'd love to talk to you. So moving on, in just a minute, I'm going to turn this over to Jason Tosh, who's an OWB director and chair of our research committee. He's going to take you on a brief trip down memory lane, building the argument for why the time was ripe to establish a new vision and strategic priorities for our viticulture and enology research program. And then he's going to unveil the details of that new strategy. So when we asked you for your input into our planning process last summer, 89% of you who responded agreed that Vit and Eno research is a good use of the industry's money. So I don't need to convince you why it's important that we're doing this. However, you might not know that it's baked right into our founding statute. Also in the statute is another mandate, promotion of Oregon's wine, grape growing, and winemaking industries, which is why this spring we're going to be undertaking a similar effort with our marketing and communications program. We'll be examining our priorities and developing a new strategic plan to guide our investments in consumer and trade marketing as well as in media relations. Over the next few months, you'll see invitations to provide your input into this process, including a listening tour around the state in April, and we hope that you'll take this opportunity to provide your thoughts to our Strategic Marketing and Communications Committee for them to consider. And there's one more phrase in this stanza that I want to make note of before turning this over to Jason, and that is economic research. This is an area that hasn't received as much attention or investment as Vit and Eno research or promotion in recent memory, but which has a great opportunity to make an impact if well executed. There are a couple projects underway right now by the Oregon Wine Research Institute and OSU's Applied Economics Department. They're investigating a couple different topics related to the all-important direct-to-consumer channel, and I want to call your attention to one of those projects. So Dr. James Stearns at OSU is currently studying wine clubs in Oregon. Specifically, he's trying to find out why people join them, how long they stay, what their buying habits are, how that interacts with their other wine purchase habits. This is all information that can be very helpful to you in improving your recruitment as well as your retention of wine club members. James is about to begin another round of winery recruitment next month, so if you'd like the chance to learn more about your wine club, and who doesn't, please consider participating. He'll be on hand at the OWRI booth tomorrow morning, ready to answer your questions and also get you signed up to participate. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up Jason Tosh, who will unveil our new vision and strategic priorities for our Vittnino research program.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, everyone. I'm very excited to be able to unveil this plan. For a nerd like me, it's pretty exciting to expose what we've been doing for the last year, so we'll get right to it. But before I do, I just want to point out a thing. Research, both Vit and enology, have been an important part of who we are since the beginning of our industry. The pioneers all planted grapes in the 60s, but quickly realized, and I've heard this from many of them firsthand, that they didn't have all the information they need to get where they wanted to go. And so they engaged research early on, and this is a document from the 70s that basically was put what they knew, had been studying and what they had reached out to Oregon State University folks for helping them learn more about what they were working on and what they were trying to achieve. And from the beginning, it's always been about improving quality. That's one point I want to keep hitting on here. So from the 70s then into the 80s, we had Steve and Barney and many others that aren't going to be mentioned or aren't mentioned, unfortunately. But a lot of headway was made in quality and canopy management and crop estimation. You know, we just kept moving forward with this quality thing into the 90s. In 1993, I believe the Oregon Wine Growers Guide was published. This was a textbook for me at Oregon State. We all looked to this document. It was a compendium of research that we all used to improve our game. Carmo Vasconcelos was hired, and she helped us achieve some of the work towards canopy balance, vine balance, and performance, again, towards quality. Live was formed in '97 thanks to Al McDonald and Ted Castile and Carmo and many others at the time to help us with our sustainable farming and improve our sustainability and become leaders in sustainability, as we heard this morning. Then into the 2000s, Paul, Patty, the 2003 Oregon Viticulture was published. Paul was working on Pot and Pot long before this current version of Pot and Pot, mycorrhizae work, and many, many others at Oregon State University. Shemeketa was, the Northwest Vit Center was put together, just a constant advancement. And now today we have the Oregon Wine Research Institute, who houses USDA. We all know about this. Since 2007, this group's been growing and dovetailing and collaborating with us as growers, working towards higher quality wines and even more productive high quality wines. Some great things are yet to come even. So just a recap of funding for our research efforts. The yellow line here is the tons crushed in Oregon over the last 10 years or so. You can see that number of tons translates to funds coming into the Oregon Wine Board. You can see that the red bar, the funding for research and enology, has not gone up quite as much until we had help from the OWA. Jana, Dan Jarman have helped us get those Oregon General funds, the Maris funds. The blue there is the NIFA funds or the AFRI funds. David Beck was instrumental in helping us get more funds leveraged for funding much needed research as our industry grows. So with that said, here was the situation. More investment, as you just saw, is being made in V&E than ever before, and research as is our mandate, as you read earlier. And our industry landscape, the types of business, the sizes of business, we are growing, we are changing, we are evolving in a very quickly evolving industry. It has been 27 years since our last strategy meeting on research for Vitinino. Silver Falls in 1991, there was a 2-day summit with vineyard owners and winery owners. Kevin Chambers on our board was there, and he mentioned that this had gone on, but 27 years, that's a long time. So what do? It's time for another summit. That's what we decided. So for the summit, we decided what our goals should be. We're going to update the vision for the research program. We're going to evaluate the current needs that we all are experiencing out there, questions that we have for our businesses and as growers and wine producers. And then let's set some new strategy for the next 5 to 10 years. And so those goals were set. Here's your steering team. So Lee, David, Kevin, John, myself, and JP Valo, starting back in January last year, we identified a need for this strategy to be played out or to be determined. And then we formed a group. And then we outlined the process of how we're going to do that. We decided we'd have a meeting at some point this year. We interviewed several moderators for this meeting and hired one. Jessica Mosaico was our choice. And then in June, we gathered stakeholder information. And here's how we did that. We started with an industry-wide survey. I'm sure all of you saw this come through on the grapevine or in an email form. I'm sure all of you filled it out and gave us your feedback. We consolidated that feedback, along with, in August, a core group of 6 or so of us, OWB staff, myself, John, several others, Kevin. We went on a 6-stop listening tour, and thank you for all those who attended that. We started in the South Willamette Valley, went to the North Willamette Valley, drove out to Walla Walla the next day, Walla Walla to Hood River to Umpqua to the Rogue. And it was a very eye-opening, wonderful experience meeting and discussing research with you all. And then also an executive input opportunity was given. So emails, phone calls with the business leaders and the proprietors of our state gave their input on from a business lens or an economic lens, which is a growing important category for research in our state. We got their input, and here's what was said. Keep funding research. We need it. We love it. We want it. Don't reduce funds. Let's just find ways to make this even more of a priority. And when we do fund research, make sure that it's addressing Oregon-specific problems. We need to really focus on the problems of Oregon. And one thing I really loved about that comment was everywhere we went, when we are focusing on Oregon problems, it's a big plus if the research can apply to all areas of Oregon. And that just goes to show that we are a very collaborative state when it comes to research for Vitinino. Immediate needs must be balanced with forward-looking opportunities and threats. So yes, the problem du jour should be looked into. Balance that with the things that we see coming down the line, threats, problems, issues. And we'll get to specific or general zones of issues that we came up with in our meeting. Applied outcomes should be realistic for all size operations. Oregon is 60-some% small business and growing business, but that's changing. So always be cognizant that we have multiple size businesses that we need to have our research apply to. And then resoundingly, we heard this every stop we went. This was the most important thing communicated to us. Please increase the access to and the education about research results. So where do we get the research? Where do we find out what you've been doing? That was a question that we heard a lot, and we realized we had a lot of work to do there. So we held the summit. This was in November, on the 1st and 2nd of November. It was a 2-day meeting with 20 people selected by our moderator and the steering committee. Numbers were held to a very nimble group that was able to break out into smaller work groups to really hash out some of the issues that we're seeing. This is the group that was there, and Jessica Mosaico, again, was our awesome facilitator for this. These people on this list, just take quick note, I'll post it again, but these are your research leadership team for this state. So at the meeting, day one, we really looked at issues, threats. These were the biggest topics. Of course, climate change, increasing labor issues, increasing production costs, always disease and pest pressures. But really, diversification of scale of operations, that was an issue that was new in my mind. And as we age and evolve in our businesses, there's going to be this point of area or this issue to address, which is small, large business. And then I was very happy to see that our state still is a sustainable farming, sustainably minded winemaking state. So please keep looking into how we can be more sustainable in our operations. So with those issues, the next day we set priorities in order to address those. And the number one priority, as it was from the 70s on through now, is wine quality. We have to maintain, improve, and always be leaders in the wine quality game. It's really who we are. So we will, number one, in first order, fund projects that support or improve wine quality. Sustainable production. This was the number two thing our group felt was most important to really devote research funds to, is sustainable production methods, both in the enology and viticulture side. And that would all be also be looking at changing climate. How do we adapt to the climate that is changing? That's a very huge threat to us, and we want to keep growing Pinot Noir. We're going to be looking at how we're going to adapt to the future. Again, we're looking 10 years out or more on this stuff. And finally, I was relieved to see that the fourth priority is still going to be our group has an appetite to fund basic or discovery research that discovers or unfolds the foundations or unlocks the potential for future applicable research to be based off of. So foundational or basic research is going on right now, but it's not, a lot of our projects are not funded as basic research. So it's still a priority, and I'm very excited for that. And so with that, the second day we worked on encapsulating all that you just saw in a vision statement, which goes like this: we will champion continuous improvement of Oregon's capacity to produce world-class wines that reflect a sense of place by sponsoring industry-leading research in the development of sustainable practices and climate adaptive skills. And that is a mouthful. I'll let you digest that for a couple seconds, because it encapsulates 2 days, 20 minds. Okay, so what's required for success? We go to all this trouble, we implement this strategy. How are we going to measure that we've been successful at this? Well, one area we targeted at the end of the day too was we're going to do better on our education and outreach. We're going to make sure that you have access to this stuff. The other thing is we're going to track and measure ourselves, like how good was the research in the world of research? Was it published a lot? Things like that. Relevance of topics, relevance to Oregon, relevance to the utility of those results. And then, again, economic impact on our businesses. Were the applicable research topics applied in business? And if so, has it saved us money? Has it prevented loss? What are some of those things? That'll be something we dig into that we decided. So this plan was formed. And then in December, we had our board meeting, and our research committee presented this document, and it's a much more detailed document than what I presented here today to the board, and they resoundingly accepted, and it was unanimous. They love the format we use. They'll be using our format for strategic planning in the marketing arena and elsewhere. So they accepted, and now we are here. We're operationalizing the new strategic plan. So what's that look like? We're going to revise the RFA, which is the request for applications for grant proposals. David Beck and I have been talking about this in meetings. We're going to identify new funding opportunities. So through OWA, through the OWB, we're going to be looking elsewhere beyond the multitude of areas where we can get more funds beyond just our tax dollars supporting this. The leveraging that's gone on is exceptional. Right now, we are creating an online knowledge center. All the research Oregon Wine Board has funded over the last 13 years, we're going to place in this online space. We're going to then look at that to possibly hang all the past research prior to the OWB's formation. We're going to look elsewhere out in the globe of research that exists worldwide, looking for research potentially from other regions and in other languages to house in a clearinghouse, so to speak, a knowledge center where you can access things that may be helpful to your business. And in the end, we've got a long work ahead of us in developing a scorecard to track the progress of how we've done, how well we've invested your dollars, to make sure that, again, research is applicable and helpful to us, not a waste. And so with that said, this is your research leadership team. If you want some details about this strategic plan or just more discussions about research, this group is hopefully available to you. They didn't know I was going to put their names up here, but you know, we need access to each other, and this is the best way to get your word to the research committee. And I want to now move on to an opportunity and introduce Dr. Greg Jones, who really needs no introduction, but Greg is here to speak on behalf of a special opportunity for helping our industry, helping fund an appeal to solve a problem which could be compared to something as sinister as phylloxera was in the 80s and 90s, red blotch. And so Greg, please come join.
Well, thank you very much. For the next few minutes, I'd like to speak to you about a real significant concern, talk a little bit about where we need to get, I think, on this topic. I'm wearing a couple of different hats here, but really the big one is I've been part of the Erath Family Foundation for nearly a decade now. Dick Erath started the foundation to continue his legacy of supporting research and education in the state of Oregon. And it's been an honor for me to serve in that capacity on the board. But I want to talk a little bit about the nature of this issue and why we see it as important. Of course, likely red blotch has been around for a really long time and we just didn't know much about it, or we were categorizing it maybe as something else. Discovered in 2012. It affects vineyards all across Oregon. We have not done a great job of doing statewide surveys on this, but we know that there's impact everywhere. We know that it affects vineyard health. We know it affects the sustainability of vineyards over time. And we also know that it has a tendency to impact wine quality in multiple different ways. So the questions really are, I think at this point for this industry, is that how widely is it spread within Oregon? We need to do a survey. We need to find out more about what's going on within the state of Oregon with this virus. How is it spreading? Is it spreading, and in what ways? Those are all big questions that we're looking to ask and answer. And we believe that the solution is to accelerate research as best we can to help us better understand this. In 2017, OWRI started a red blotch study team that includes virologists, entomologists, plant physiologists, and enologists, all looking at this issue from multiple different sides. In 2018, Domaine Serene put out a $500,000 commitment to better study this, to examine it much more closely in the Willamette Valley. We also have regional and multi-state research going on down at the Southern Oregon Research and Extension Center in Medford. We have research going on at Washington State University, UC Davis, UC Berkeley, and Cornell. We're working toward a science-based recommendation through extension in the vineyard and cellar. And to that point, we've already developed a Red Blotch information webpage on the OSU Extension website. Plus there's annual meetings. The most recent one was held in November in Salem. There's a very comprehensive team of USDA, ARS researchers and OSU faculty and researchers that are looking at this issue, along with the project managers Lee Bartholomew and Mark Chen. The objectives are really pretty straightforward. We need to better understand the genetic diversity of the virus. We need to better identify the vectors. We have some ideas, but we need to be more complete on that. We need to map this out in vineyards and better understand how it spreads within a vineyard or between vineyards. We need to understand the vine physiology and the issues of impact on fruit quality, and then determine how this impacts wine quality. All questions that are very important. And this will lead us, hopefully, to provide more information through various outreaches, such as the website. So, as I said earlier, Domain Screen put forward a wine industry matching funds challenge of $500,000. The ERAF Family Foundation has contributed. The Oregon Wine Board has contributed. The American Vineyard Foundation has contributed. But to date, we are at $200,000 in that additional contribution. So we're still $300,000 short to the goal to accelerate this research that's needed in the state. So with that, I'd like to really propose that we need your support for this research. Whether or not it's in your vineyard, there's a likelihood that all of us will be impacted at one point or another. And so that we need to act as a community to look at this threat. As Herb Quaddy said in the video earlier, it's a big issue, and we need to really act as a community to look at this. And I think one of the best examples of kind of how this potentially could come together is how California got together and tackled Pierce's disease overall. So we have an invitation here to combat red blotch through research, hopefully meeting this challenge. We have $300,000 left to go. You can make a donation. Donations can be made to the OSU Foundation. Gifts of any size make a difference. The initial research proposal and first-year report is available from Mark Chen. If you would like to read more about it, please contact him. If you want to make a donation, visit Ben McLuhan at the OWRI booth at number 150 from 2 to 3 p.m. today. You can also contact Todd Bastian or Ben McLuhan at the OSU Foundation. I'll leave this up here. And also Mark Chen at the Oregon Wine Research Institute. So with that, I just want to say we need to be a community to help support the efforts to look at this very significant issue so that we can hopefully make some strides to better understand it and better be able to manage it and deal with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg, for that. If you're like me, not used to maybe seeing Greg Jones in a beard, it takes a little getting used to, but I think the Unabomber look will grow on some of us. We'll get used to it over time. A couple points deserve to be underscored there. Number one, Greg just touched on so many of our Oregon State colleagues without whom we would not have this event, certainly. We would not have the benefits of Grape Day. We would not have the benefits of their day in and day out support, whether it's extension or other efforts that they make. So I want to make sure that we take a minute to acknowledge all the Oregon State expertise in this room and those who couldn't be here. We could not do what we do without them. We're getting ready to cut you loose. Just a couple reminders real quick. Our evening social, our soiree, starts at 5 o'clock sharp. It'll be right out here on the trade show floor. We'll have a number of wines for you to taste, including the new Solidarity wines that you've heard about today. Just one of the 3 varieties is bottled and ready. It'll be the rosé. It's that combination of Rogue Valley fruit and Willamette Valley winemaking, and you'll hear more about that today, but that starts at 5 o'clock. The poster session is mentioned again in your book. Some of you got to it today. It's in room E141. We want to make sure you do that. Also, we're pressing right up against the start of the next mini session, which will take place against the back wall in the little theater area. The subject of the mini session at about 215 or 216, whenever I'm done, is insurance options to address wildfire challenges. So you'll want to go to that if that's of interest. I do want to ask one of my colleagues also to join up here. I don't know how many of you have always wanted to meet Robert Parker, but the Robert Parker you're thinking of couldn't be here, so we got a better Robert Parker. Robert Parker is a faculty member and research expert at the University of Oregon, and working closely with Greg Jones and also his colleague Stephen from the University of Oregon, they have taken on for what for us is an absolutely critical project. That annual vineyard and winery report is so important to our industry. It is the source of much of our grant funding applications that we are starting to see so much success for. I sort of dragged Robert up here because he directs the team that does all the work, and he works closely with Greg Jones to make sure that what we're doing provides continuity with what has come before in the last few years. I didn't want to put Robert on the spot with a public commentary, but I wanted you to see the face. He's sitting right outside the main door there, near where you picked up your badges. He's got the forms that you need if you'd like to take them with you to complete your part of the Vineyard and Winery Survey. The Oregon Wine Board will, as we always do, be sending you the electronic links if you don't want to do the hard copy, but we'll take your information in whatever way you'll give us, because so many more of you, and we're glad to say so many more of you are, coming to us and asking for data for your own grant applications regionally and across various associations. We're glad to support that, but we've got to have your input, and now's the time for it. I want to make sure that we get a chance to thank both Robert and Greg Jones for their work on that project. Thank you, Robert. So I think we're done. You've got afternoon sessions. You've got a chance to visit with some of our friends on the trade show floor. Dessert is out there. And we'll see you in the afternoon sessions shortly, and we'll see you back on the trade show floor at 5 sharp for our evening social hour. Thank you.